So for those of you who are listening, we're already recording this, so welcome to the Dallas Film Podcast. My name's Tony Armour, Dallas Film Commissioner, soon out the door Dallas Film Commissioner, and we've got Sharon Arteaga with us today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Tony.
Spider, our audio engineer, he just always starts recording as soon as we start talking. And so ends up using whatever, because you just never know where the conversation goes. And the way that we do these things is literally it's just a conversation. I never even come with a list of questions. I'd like to play it as if we're just meeting in a bar somewhere and talking and see how it goes. So that's the format. There is no format.
Great.
But yes, thank you. I'm excited to be. I'm not excited, that I'm leaving Dallas Film Commission, because I really do enjoy the film commission world and being involved in that way. But like I said, after 10 years as a film commissioner, this was just an opportunity that I couldn't pass up. So I'm excited.
Yeah, that's exciting for your next chapter.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
We'll be taking over the podcast.
We're figuring that out still. I may still be podcast host because Talon Entertainment Finance did purchase Southside Studios in Dallas, and so I'll still be in Dallas a lot for the sound stages that are here. And then whoever the next film commissioner is, it's the only proper sound stages in Dallas, so we'll be working hand in hand together to make sure projects are coming in the stages. So it might be a natural fit for me to continue on as the podcast host. So we shall see. To be determined. Had you listened to any of the episodes prior to being on today?
I'm sorry to say that I have not.
That's okay. Now you have to. After it's over, you can go and look through. We have some fun guests. I mean, Roger Deakins, for God's sakes, like an amazing. Him and his wife James are such a great. Just as long as they've been in the industry and the number of Oscars, it's they're an amazing couple.
Did he record that whenever you all had him speak at the Texas Theater?
Yeah, so when we had him, it would have been June of 2023, and so we did a specific podcast recording, and then we also recorded a 2-hour Q&A that we did at the Texas Theater after screening Blade Runner 2049. So both of those are our podcast episodes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun.
I will definitely be digging in. I'm a new listener now.
Good, there you go. She's subscribing. Well, let's, why don't you give the audience your introduction? Tell us about what you're doing with Austin Film Society, and you're a filmmaker as well. So give us a quick rundown and a bio.
Yeah. So my name is Sharon Arteaga. I'm originally from Corpus Christi, Texas. I grew up there I think I moved to Austin when it was 2006. I was about 23, I think. And I left Texas. I left Corpus for film opportunities. My bio goes that when I turned 15, instead of having a quinceañera, I asked my mom to get me a video camera instead. And that was my first film business negotiation. And I was always dreaming of, making films. And in Corpus, when I was growing up, there weren't a ton of opportunities, or not that I knew of. So I made the move to Austin. I went to RTF Film School here. And even after having graduated from their undergraduate program, I still, was kind of trying to figure out what's the next step. Didn't have a whole lot of things to hold on to or to kind of follow. But thankfully, I was in a community where a lot of people were still creating, and we had the Austin Film Society. So I think through the Austin Film Society, not only was I finding other filmmakers, but I became a filmmaking mentor. Kind of in the early 2010s, I was teaching at-risk youth in after-school film clubs, and then would do their summer camps for Austin Film Society. After a while, that became adult education. And at this time, I'm freelancing on the side while doing the AFS as a contractor, AFS Education Opportunities. So I feel like AFS was helping me in that transition from film school into the industry. And I was able to be a production coordinator when I wasn't at these film clubs. I would sometimes PA or sometimes field produce. And about a year ago, I I found this opportunity with AFS to join the artist development team as the senior manager of filmmaker support. And it's a program that had actually helped me by giving my films funding in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the AFS grant, which I'm going to talk about today. Through that grant, I think I received my first grant in 2015. Not only did it give me the funds that I needed to finish the film that I was working on, but it also gave me validation as a creator and had my name get some more exposure and kind of just helped me take the next step to the next type of film that I wanted to make. And I work a lot in drama and lighthearted dramas. I write a lot of stories that are personal to my upbringing as a first generation Mexican American growing up in South Texas. And with AFS, they funded a project that was one of my first like action adventure type films that had those themes in it. And they've also funded another project of mine that was another big action adventure film that's currently in the festival circuit called In Tow. That's about a mobile home that gets repossessed with a mother and daughter inside of it. And thanks to AFS, I was able to make that project come true. So last year when I saw this role open up, I just felt that I could really bring a lot to the AFS team from my experience being just supported by them. My growth as an artist has been very much supported by AFS. And so I'm happy to be a part of that for other filmmakers throughout Texas now.
That's awesome. And, the thing about Austin Film Society that I think is so unique is it's literally a model for film societies, film commissions, organizations around the country. Like nobody does what you guys do at the level. And it always blows me away. I have a film society in Florida that I started that really, it just runs our annual film festival, Sunscreen Film Festival in Florida. And we're going in our 20th year this year. And I know how hard it is as a nonprofit organization just to raise money for the festival and other events and things that you do throughout the year. And to be able to do it at the level that you guys do is just like, I look at your website and I'm like, I don't know how they do this. You actually have full-time staff. Amazing. How is this possible?
Yeah. And like talking about sustainability, even from being able to teach these after school film clubs or do some adult education like once a month, and now being on staff, I feel, AFS has been a part of my sustainability as a filmmaker by providing a job as well.
Yeah, and as we know, that's the hardest part about this industry, right? Is making a living. That's why when people graduate from film school, they make commercials. It's because that's how you have to support yourself. So you were talking about In Tow, the project that just came. Is that a feature or a short film that's out on the festival circuit now?
It's what I call a LORT film because it's a longer short.
Okay.
It's 21 minutes in length. And when people are watching it, a lot of the responses are like, Sharon, you're like basically on your way to a feature already. Jump into them now. So, it's a big short.
Yeah, that's good. Well, the piece of advice that I always give filmmakers when submitting to film festivals and our festival is always in short film, if you're making a short film, there's one word in short film that means more than anything, and it's short. Keep them short. Right. But yeah, that 20 or 21 minutes, like you really can't stretch much more than that. Once you start stretching more than that, it's hard to get It's hard to get programmed at festivals because they're like, well, we've got this 29 minute short, or we have these 3 10 minutes that are equally as good. And you always take the 3 10s over the 1 29 minute short.
Yeah. And even the 21 minute short was a challenge to get programmed.
Yeah.
I feel like, we knew that it was going to be a challenge, and it definitely was. I'm very grateful that we got the programming that we did. We actually premiered at Dallas International in 2023. So last year.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, James Faust over there and Diff. It's a great festival they put on for sure.
Yeah, it was a great world premiere for us.
Yeah, that's good. And so you must be near the tail end of your festival run now if you've been screening for almost a year and a half at this point.
Yes, we have actually tomorrow. I'm not sure when this is going to air, but June 26th, tomorrow, we're going to be playing at Soho House in Austin.
Cool.
So it'll be a little bit more of an exclusive screening. But we're moving into doing community screenings now. We were funded by the City of Austin grant. A part of our project was funded by them. And so we are going to be hosting an event in September where we're bringing the film to our target audience of immigrant families and families that are dealing with like housing insecurity. Even though this is an action adventure comedy, we want to bring entertainment to those families that aren't usually going to a film festival or looking for organizations like the Austin Film Society.
Well, and sometimes through an action adventure comedy or a sci-fi or anything else, if there's a message you're trying to get across, that's honestly the best way to reach your audience, because nobody wants to be preached to, right? They don't want you to just beat them over the head and tell them something. Is like encapsulate it in something entertaining, and people will, people have a tendency to enjoy it more and makes them think a little bit.
Yes, yes.
And so since everybody's telling you to make a feature, are you making a feature next? Do you have ideas? Anything you're writing?
Yes, I have a couple feature ideas. I think it's, definitely I have to overcome my my fear of the unknown with features. It's a lot more to them. There's a lot more to them. I think the money part is the part that I find most intimidating. It's like, okay, now how am I going to get funding for something that is at least 90 minutes long?
Sure.
Where I know how challenging it is for like a 20-minute film.
Yeah.
But I do have a film that I want to make based on my grandma's last adventure here in Austin. And it has a lot of themes of like caretaking in the sandwich generation, as we know it. Like a parent is having to take care of a elderly woman who has early signs of Alzheimer's, and then also wrangle a like 5-year-old hyperactive child,
right?
All on a journey, on a very short journey to get ice cream. But it's going to be just a film that has a lot of chaos, but a lot of heart at the same time.
Yeah. And those are always fun, anytime you can, like you said, you can encapsulate that fun in there. And I'm gonna give you some unsolicited advice as someone who, my first feature film was in 2004, was a $6,000 feature film, and then I've gone on to make bigger films after that. Just make it, like, just find a way to get it made. On that first film that we did, it was just friends getting together and working and shooting only on weekends over the course of 4 months, because we wanted to make a feature film. And then after that, then people are like, oh, you made a feature film. Will you help me produce my feature? And then more opportunities come from that. And I know the money is always hard. You're like, well, this is how much we need to make this right, and to pay every single person on the crew a fair wage and everything else. And it is a challenge. It's tough, because then you could go years of trying to raise that money and putting it together and find a way to make your feature film. And maybe it's something that's super simple that you can make with 2 characters in a house or whatever it might be. But I would highly encourage you just to go make a feature for whatever you have, because that really, just doing it, like you said, the experience of doing it, it is much bigger. And then I know once we finished ours, it was like, oh, okay, if we could start over again, now I know, what I would do differently. But it makes such a difference just to, like, just to do it and knock it out. So it's easier said than done, but you can do it. I believe you can.
Thank you. Yes. And the advice is appreciated for sure.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about Austin Film Society and what your role is there, and about the Filmmaker grants, because I don't know much about it. I know that there are grants, but I don't really know what the grant programs are or how those work.
Yeah, so I'm the senior manager of Filmmaker support, and our team has been known as Filmmaker support for a while, but we're moving into calling ourselves the artist development team instead, because a lot of our goals are to develop artists in their growth. So we support emerging, mid-career, and established filmmakers. So I'll talk about those opportunities here in a bit, but whereas Filmmaker support is something that AFS is doing across many departments and many programs. So we have our cinema where we're showing films, and it's, a way for filmmakers to get to know films that have been made in the past, like highly influential films, art house films, from the past and present. And then even we have a lot of film festivals that show films at AFS Cinema as well. So that's one part of our ecosystem. The other part is we have a couple of education programs where we train creatives for the workforce. And then in my particular department, that's, I think, the biggest part of our department is the grant that we administer every year. So we put the grant together, like we put all the moving pieces in place, and then we get the word out. That's a lot of what my team does. Sometimes we'll come out to different cities because a lot of filmmakers know us as the AFS grant. And because it's Austin Film Society is in the name of the grant, they assume that it's funding only available for Austin filmmakers. Right. And so we go out to different cities in Texas or make virtual webinars where we let people know that these are actually resources for all Texas-based filmmakers.
So it's everywhere Texas-based. You can't be in Oklahoma and apply for the grant. You've got to be in Texas.
Right. Okay. Yes.
Just making sure everybody knows.
The director has to be based in Texas. Okay. Because the director is the main applicant for the grant. And so, even if it's an entire Texas team, and your director is not based in Texas, then you're not eligible for the grant. The eligibility has a few parts to it, but overall, we're looking to empower filmmakers throughout the state, not just with the grant, but we also have other programs like a works in progress program where filmmakers can show either a rough cut or a fine cut of a film and get feedback from a small focus group to help them just kind of shape that final edit or wherever they are in the process. We have intensives where we mentor filmmakers for like a 3 to 5 day window, depending on whether it's for documentary or for fiction. But we provide just very intimate mentorship to those filmmakers. And these are filmmakers that we are identifying through the grant process. Right. So we give out, I think kind of the current track record is that 10% of applicants receive funding. So it's definitely a competitive grant.
How many people apply on an annual basis?
I want to say that it's about 200 applications.
Okay. That's not too bad. I would think that it would be much higher. I would think you'd get like 2,000 applications, but 200 is manageable.
Yeah. And it's per cycle. So we have two cycles every year. There's a features one at the beginning of the year. And that's the current cycle that we just closed on. Our short cycle, it's going to be opening up in August. And that's for short films. But, even if someone doesn't receive a grant, just the fact that they applied to the grant, allows us to start seeing their name emerge. Like we start getting awareness as to who's creating things throughout Texas. And sometimes we're identifying these projects for programs like our artist intensives, our doc intensives, or sometimes national organizations are coming to us as like the hub of Texas to ask us, who are the filmmakers that we need to be looking out for? And, if someone has applied to the grant, we're aware of their work and their voice, and we're able to kind of communicate that to those larger opportunities. Go ahead. It's pipeline. Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's really interesting that the features and shorts, that you have the two separate ones there, because as we just talked about a second ago, features can be hard because it's really hard to raise money for it. Is it a scalable amount for shorts and features? Can you talk about like what the funding is like for people that would apply?
Yes. And so this will be relevant this year. I mean, so if somebody in the future finds this podcast, definitely look into the website to see if the amounts have changed. But in our feature cycle, we provide up to $15K for a feature project. For shorts, it's going to be up to $10K is the the current amount. We have a couple of different grants within these cycles. So in the shorts round that's coming up, we have a fund called the Harrison McClure Endowed Film Fund, and that's for undergraduate students.
Okay.
So for that one, we give a $2,000 flat grant. If someone applies to it and they receive it, they get those $2,000. And then if you're applying to the general shorts grant, you can request up to $10,000. So that's in the short cycle. In the features, a little very special part, especially for this podcast being the Dallas Film Podcast, we have a grant that is specifically for North Texas filmmakers.
Okay.
And that is a pot of, currently it's a pot of $30K that we give out to just North Texas filmmakers. And it's called the North Texas Pioneer Grant. It was started by David Lowry, who
Nice.
is up in the DFW area. And so we honor that for anyone residing in DFW and any surrounding counties. So if you're out there and you're looking to work on your first, I don't remember if it's first and second feature, look into that North Texas Pioneer grant.
And it's up to 15,000, and there's a pool of 30 for that particular grant.
There's a pool of 30, and yeah, we could give anywhere from, up to 15K.
Sure. Yeah. And how does that work then for, let's say someone does get the grant? Because, you could just write somebody a check for $15,000 and they could go on vacation and never make a movie. How do you ensure that is, do they have to spend the money first and it's a reimbursement, or how do you make sure that those funds are actually going towards, their particular project?
Well, we don't require any reporting on our grant, but we do ask for updates like every year. We just kind of check in to see where the progress has been made. We understand that sometimes things shift.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it kind of is on the honor system, and we don't charge for these grants either. Yeah. We have had, filmmakers who go into a project and it's like a feature that they applied for funding for, and then in the process it becomes maybe like a series or something. But when they applied, it was already, what they committed to was that feature. So
sure.
Even though we don't fund series, we will still, they don't have to give their funding.
Yeah,
back.
it can shift to whatever the project shifted to. Because a lot of times, if you're applying, is that 15, okay, I've got my project just about done, I need a little more for post-production to help finish it up, and that 15 can be a big help. Or you're in the development process and you've got to hire casting director to help bring talent on board or whatever it might be. And, every little bit helps when you're making a feature. Hell, some people can make an entire feature for $15,000 depending on how you do it. I'm assuming you're not eligible to apply for any grants anymore.
No, I'm not. I was like, it's time to share the love with others too. So, yes. Yeah. Currently not, AFS staff and board are not able to apply to that. But you were talking about every little bit helps. Another part of the grant that we have is that you can also opt into in-kind services. So for anyone not familiar with the term in-kind, it's any good or service that is donated to you. So we have a couple of packages available in the features round, which is the round that has the North Texas Pioneer Grant. You can opt into a camera package in the value of $10K from nice. MPS Camera and Lighting Austin. And you all have one in Dallas as well. So I think that there are so many wins for our Dallas filmmakers here. And then we have another in-kind grant in the feature cycle that sponsors a DCP through the company Stuck On. And so you could have a DCP package made for you. And in the shorts round, you can also opt into the MPS
right.
camera.
So even if you don't get the, say, $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever you need for your project, you might get a free camera package, which it's still essentially free money for your project because you don't have to rent that camera package then. So,
well, we've actually required filmmakers, the only way they can opt into those in-kind services is by requesting a cash grant as well.
Yeah.
So we're twisting filmmakers' arms. We're telling them, please ask us for money first, and also ask us for equipment.
I wouldn't think it would be that hard for people to be like, hey, do you want some free stuff for your movie? That's really hard to make anyways. Do you find that it's hard to get people to apply? Do you really, because you talked about early on about spreading the word, about letting people know that, because people think just Austin. I would think by this point in time, because it's been happening for so long, that the word of mouth would be, yeah, you have to apply. I would think every film school in the state of Texas would be telling their students to apply for these grants. Do you find difficulties getting enough applicants?
I mean, I feel like not everybody thinks of applying to a grant as a way to get funding. Crowdfunding is probably one of the more popular ways to fundraise, or trying to get large donors. So some people just shy away from grants for one reason or another. I think also if someone has never applied to a grant before, they could find the process intimidating.
Yeah.
And, there are required materials that we ask for in the grant, but these are materials that you would have to be doing anyway as you form your film.
Of course.
In my days before AFS, the AFS grant was just woven into my creative process. Like, it was a way for me to give myself a deadline and to also almost have like a template that I would fill in, and it would help me really start forming my ideas. As I'm putting things on paper, I'm thinking about my film in a different way. I'm thinking like, okay, why exactly do I want to make this film? And I'm having to articulate this, in writing.
What are some of the
things?
What are some of the things that the questions and things that the grant requires? So you mentioned that one, like, why do you want to make this film? Like, what other types of things are you asking for applicants to include?
Yeah, we have them include a project description. This is probably the most important part of the application, because it's where you're telling us what your story is, what the themes you're exploring are, why you're being drawn to this, and like why you are the filmmaker to make this film. And then we also ask questions. Well, in that project description, you'll tell us your production plan, how you plan to make this film a reality, what avenues you're going to go through to get funding for the film besides Austin Film Society.
Right.
Are you doing crowdfunding, or what is it what is your plan basically to make this film, and what's your artistic vision for it? So that's the project description. Another really important part of the grant is being able to see a video sample. And in that video sample, you can show either work from the current film that you're applying for, because we fund anything from pre-production through distribution in both cycles. In the feature cycle, we also fund development, depending on where you are in your career. But the video sample, like I said, you can submit something from the current project. You could submit something from your previous work so that we could see, what have you made in the past, and what is your directing style. Or if you've never made a film before, you can also submit things from your other crew members, key crew members. So if you have a producer, I know in the past, when I got my first grant, I sent a work sample of one of the films I'd made, but then I also sent, because my film was going to be a very ambitious, like, period piece, I sent in a video sample from my producer who had made like a World War II short film. And so it gave them an idea of like, okay, this director, she's worked in these themes before. We can see how she's going to be directing this next film, but we can also see the logistical support that it's there.
Right.
So the video sample is another big part. We ask for a budget, a treatment. We used to ask for scripts. We used to require that someone have a script done, but it's not part of the requirements anymore. We have a whole section where you could submit optional materials, but the current requirement is that you submit a treatment of your film, and treatment in terms of walking us through each act and story beat, so that a reviewer is just able to quickly get a sense of your story by reading that treatment instead of having to read.
Yeah, they don't have to read 90 pages to know what your film is about. They can just read the 3-page treatment or whatever and see and get a gist for the whole thing. That makes a lot of sense. I wonder if filmmakers now are like, ChatGPT, will you take this 90-page screenplay and turn it into a 3-page treatment for me? I can imagine that would be one way that people are like, well, I've already written it. I'm technically, I've done the work. I'm just shortening it. Right.
Because some creators, not every creator uses the treatment as part of their creative process.
Right. So yeah. Some just get in. And I know when I write a script, I'm doing an outline and then just jumping right in and writing it. And I'm like, I don't have time to waste on that treatment. Like, let's go.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So it's interesting because, like you said, all of those things are things that filmmakers are going to need anyways, budget and all that kind of stuff. And so I think it's really good because it forces a filmmaker, if they haven't done that and they want to apply for it, to be like, okay, now put all the pieces in place. And then once you put them in place, you're like, well, even if I don't get the grant, I'm in a much better position to actually move forward and make this project now than I was prior because I have all of these things ready.
Yes, exactly. And that's why it has become a part of my creative process, even though I'm no longer applying to the AFS grant.
Yeah.
Grants just give me that deadline that I need. I always say that a filmmaker needs 3 things in order to have a sustainable art form, right? There's community, funding, and deadlines. And those deadlines, I mean, I'm kind of just like looking anywhere, like where's the script competition I could do, or where, and even if I just turn in something that I don't feel is going to be the finished film, it's allowed me to just make like leaps on my progress for that particular film. And with our AFS grant, if you do happen to be selected, then you actually get funding, which is that other pillar that you need. So, and you join a community of grant recipients who we have different things available through AFS. So you're also getting that community.
Yeah. Well, and you talked about, screenwriting contests. I saw in your bio that did you win? Were you finalists in ScreenCraft's? We'll talk about that ScreenCraft competition that you were a part of.
I think we were semifinalists for In Tow for ScreenCraft. I think I might have done it in 2 different cycles, and we were quarterfinalists in one cycle and semifinalists in the other, but we never quite got to that final round.
Yeah.
For that particular one. But we did get a lot of support from other organizations like AFS before I was working for them. The New Orleans Film Society also provides a lot of support for Texas filmmakers. Yeah,
New Orleans actually Film Society and Film Festival is really great. I'd been a sponsor when I was in Florida as a film commissioner, and in Dallas, a sponsor of New Orleans Film Festival every year, because they really do support Southern voices in filmmaking, whether it's Texas, Louisiana, Florida, whatever it is. So I find that's a really great festival. I enjoy that one a lot. And I think they do a great job over there as well.
Yes, we were in their South Pitch competition, and it was in a virtual year. That was my first time formally pitching anywhere. But so there was the South Pitch competition. We were runners up on that. And then my producer, who was Houston-based, Summer Garcia Soccer, we had a producing team with Chelsea Hernandez and Summer Garcia Soccer, but Summer was selected for New Orleans Film Society's Southern Producers Lab, which mentors producers, like people who are wanting to produce as their career.
Yeah, that's great. What have you found that being involved with Austin Film Society, and then, you got New Orleans Film Society, has it opened up sort of avenues to other groups around the country where you're starting to learn more what other like sort of film societies or film groups are doing? And what advice would you give to filmmakers that, that are applying for AFS or anything else about putting themselves out there and trying to find more resources for their films?
Yeah, I mean, we have a newsletter that we put out once a month for filmmakers that has filmmaker opportunities that kind of our team are just keeping an eye out to see, who's also supporting artists throughout the country. And so we try to put those opportunities in there. I think a new group or a group that was new to me that I didn't know about before AFS was the IMAS group, which is like the Southern Regional Collective that meets up once a month and kind of just shares resources throughout the South. And the second half of that, you were asking what kind of advice?
Yeah, just advice for filmmakers who, they're applying for AFS, they're applying for New Orleans Film Society. You said you're sending out a newsletter that has, a variety of information. And what I always tell people a lot of times is nofilmschool.com always would have a list of like 100 grants that they would do twice a year. I don't know if they still do it because when I would send people and say, go check out nofilmschool.com, it's like some of the grants are old, like 2022 was the last time they did that list.
Yeah, they seem to have kind of slowed down on there, but I love No Film School. I would say, just making sure that you have sources to get this kind of information from. So again, going back to my 3-part filmmaker sustainability kit, the community part is just so important, whether it's an online community or you're subscribing to newsletters, following people on Instagram. You just never know what piece of information someone else is going to have that you haven't come across yet.
Yeah.
And it's just a good way to keep yourself in the know of like who your fellow creators are, or what new opportunities are out there, who's creating what. I think just staying plugged in, because it's not filmmaking is not a art form that you do in isolation.
Yeah.
Like you need people for every step of the process. Even the script part, I feel like a successful story is one that it's had eyes from, your peers or maybe your enemies even who provide a different perspective to you.
Well, and that's why I brought up ScreenCraft. ScreenCraft is whenever I need coverage on a project, I go to ScreenCraft. I think that they provide some of the best coverage out there for any, project that you're working on. I've not sent it in for shorts, but for features, like I always get coverage from ScreenCraft, and I love their coverage in general. And I was a finalist on a screenplay a few years ago in a ScreenCraft competition as well. So that's
awesome.
Yeah.
That's great, and that's good to know about the features. I didn't realize, because I've actually never had coverage before.
No, their coverage.
I've only worked in shorts.
So I don't know anybody at the Blacklist, but the Blacklist has their coverage too, and I can't stand it. I think it's terrible. So sorry, Blacklist, but I've paid for your coverage before, and it's garbage compared to ScreenCraft. It's a much better quality, much more in depth. I feel like they really take their time. And the nice thing is like, you don't know who's reading it, right? It's just, random stranger who doesn't know you. You're not related to them. They don't have to say nice things, and they can, just be really honest about the feedback on it. So I always like ScreenCraft. And then
so important feedback.
Yeah, and then Stage 32 as well. I don't know how familiar you are with Stage 32.
I haven't used their resources, but other than their free newsletter, which I still get things out of that, just reading little, even headlines that they have for free classes that are coming up or something. Even the captions are already helping me for that from Stage 30.
Stage 32 is great. They market themselves as LinkedIn for the creative industry, basically. And then they've got a huge amount of educational programming on there. And so we've been, as a film commission, and I know they've been working with other film commissions around the country too, sharing information from Stage 32, because they have put together like an entire certificate training program. Because one of the conversations, we always had is like, people always want to teach screenwriting and directing and cinematography, but you don't ever teach somebody how to be a production manager, how to be a script supervisor, how to be these positions that you need to have on set that it's hard to find those educational things for. And so they actually have like an entire certificate program for a lot of those now. So I like to recommend Stage 32 as a resource for filmmakers as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, before we wrap up, anything else you want to share about Austin Film Society and the grants or projects that you're working on in general?
Well, I was still thinking through some advice for filmmakers who are applying to the grant. And something that I have learned just throughout my career has been to show up for opportunities, even if you don't get them that year, like show up again. And something that we do with the AFS grant is that if you request feedback, we will give you feedback on your application. And this comes from the pool of reviewers and panelists that are looking at your work, because our team doesn't select the grantees. So we give feedback, and when I was an applying filmmaker, I would look at that feedback and give it, make sure that I considered it and looked at how I could strengthen my application next time, or like what were the questions that I didn't quite answer that the reviewer was left wondering about, or so showing up for these opportunities, taking advantage of any feedback points, whether it's from feedback you request from us or having your peers read through your application before you even send it to us. I think having another set of eyes on it so that you can make sure that someone else will understand what it is that you've put on paper, especially someone who's not already very familiar with your work. Yeah. And so that would be advice on the grant side. But I think just as a filmmaker, my advice there is just, again, to show up to whatever opportunity presents itself, whether it's, getting an invitation to be on a podcast or maybe being invited for a career day somewhere, putting together these presentations or showing up to a competition. Like, everything is going to be just helping you shape some other part of you that you haven't shaped yet. Of course, you do have to also pay attention to what your capacity is. And, you can't say yes to every single thing, but show up for yourself and keep making things. I know it's a very difficult industry. So being surrounded by a community that can support you or can listen to you when you're just feeling like you, are ready to quit or something like that. Such a valuable thing to have at your reach. And yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah. It's like you said, it's always a team effort when you're trying to get a film made, and you have to have that support from friends, family. And if you're not getting it from friends and family, then that film community that's trying to do the same thing that you are, to get that support there. We'll make sure that we get information on the next grant round, and we'll share it through our newsletter and social media and everything, and put it out there since it starts in August. And I'm thinking that this episode, when will this episode? End of July, something like that, is when this episode will come out. So we'll be just in time to talk about it and for people to listen. And then anybody that's listening, pay attention to our newsletter and social media, and you'll see information about the grants, or go to the Austin Film Society website. That's super easy as well. It's all the information is right on there.
Yeah. And when the grant is launched, we always launch it with a instruction sheet that'll walk you through every part of the grant. And we incorporate tips in there and are available in case you still have a question after that. Well,
awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Dallas Film Podcast today. It was great chatting with you, learning all about the projects that you're working on and the grant program too. It's an amazing program, and something, filmmakers, come on, it's free money for your projects. There's zero reason why you shouldn't be applying for this stuff.
Yep. You don't even have to be a member, which a lot of places will require.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you again. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll come back and listen next week.